Hello, hello, hello. Thank you guys for checking out the video. This week we have a really cool one that I'm super excited about. This is actually a viewer suggested item. It is a pocket sharpener, pocket stone with a strop. And the person who commented it, I'll put it on the screen now. They commented that on a short that I had posted where I was looking for a video idea. And I like this one, so I made it. And so this person is going to be getting it sent to them for free. So if you guys have cool ideas for videos, drop them in the comments down below, because I don't have that many subscribers. And, you know, you have a pretty decent chance of getting something, you know, for free from a YouTuber. So, you know, if it's something that you got a cool idea kicking around inside your head, drop it down below. Maybe I'll make it. I don't know. And also I would like to know what you guys think about this video format of me just doing the whole thing with a voiceover. When I made the last video and this video, I was sick. I don't know if you guys might be able to hear it in my voice. I'm still a little bit getting my voice back, but so I didn't record any audio while I was recording the video for it. So I'd be curious to know what you guys think about that. And, you know, if you don't mind contributing to my ability to give you guys the videos that you want to see, it would be very helpful to me. So let's get into it here. We are just laying out right now, just leaving a little bit of a stitch line on either side. Just, you know, we can always take it off, but you can't add it back on. So I gave myself a nice little, probably 1/4 inch on either side, maybe, yeah, about 1/4 inch. I think it was like 45 millimeters. I don't remember the length. I'll try to go back and listen and put it on the screen for you guys. So we're just going to go ahead and get that cut out, lay out where the button's going to be, get the bevels around the outside. I didn't end up doing the hexagon looking angular style on that. I ended up doing one with a pointed flap and one with a broadly rounded flap. And now we're just going to go ahead and figure out where we can let this laid out. I'm trying to utilize the smaller pieces that I can't use for my wallets that I make for this project. Obviously, my larger pieces that'll work for my wallets that I sell. So we will just utilize this piece, and we were able to get 2 appropriate size pieces out of it anyway. So no big deal there. Just going to go ahead and get those both laid out as close to the same as possible, and just use the other piece as a layout tool for this one. The reason is for doing the different style flaps on there, as you can see, there's a slightly different end on the live edge or the end grain there of the leather straps that I'm using. So necessity is the mother of invention, as they say, right? So we're just going to square up the ends here and get those cut off, laying out a center line here and just connecting those to the square lines across so we can get the nice point on there and make it nice and symmetrical. And doing the same-ish thing on the bull rounded edge there, just to get that symmetrical and squared across at the same rate. While I'm laying those out, I would be curious to know which of the designs, because I do think I might end up selling these in my Etsy shop. So if you guys have a preference one way or the other as far as the pointed tip or the rounded tip, drop it in the comments down below. Your guys' feedback's like invaluable to me. So I know that everybody's always asking for you to comment and stuff to boost the algorithm or whatever. I'm genuinely just asking because I'd like to know what you guys think about things. I don't know, maybe other YouTubers are also doing the same thing, but that's what I'm curious about. So if you don't mind while you're watching, just, you know, leave me a little bit of feedback as far as, you know, what you guys like to see, what you guys want. So here we are, we're just sprayed down the leather, doing the Maker's Mark stamp on there. You can see here I'm using, if you look closely, my press that I'm using is actually a drill press that I used a chunk of wood. I drilled down into it with a drill bit, and I'm just using the lever on that. A little redneck ingenuity. I'm waiting on getting an arbor press. Why am I waiting? That's a great question. I don't know. Sometimes you just make stupid decisions about, you know, evaluating whether or not you really need something or don't need it. I mean, I obviously don't really need it. I'm able to stamp my leather just fine without it, but it would be nicer. It'd probably look better for videos also if I had one. And I guess that's something that I should be worrying about, is how nice things look in videos. So just using another scrap of paper there to lay out a piece of template to get these pieces cut to stitch on for the outside. I'll put the measurements up on the screen again. I don't remember what they are, but probably the same as the strap, so about 45 to 47 millimeters, if I remember correctly. And after we get those things cut, our top pieces, we will use our round chisels, or our, I guess they're probably called round chisels. I probably should look up what they're called. I don't know what they're called. They cut half rounds in whatever you bang them into. So we're going to do that on both those pieces that we just cut out, as well as these straps, so that it's a little bit easier to pinch the stone and pull it back out. So we do the top piece first, and then we use that as a template so that the top piece and the strap both line up perfectly and look real pretty like. So now we are going to bevel everything. Beveling's my favorite project. I don't know if you guys do leather work, or if you're just watching leather work because you find it interesting or you'd like to get into it. Beveling's my favorite part of the entire... Oh yeah, look at me pointing at the subscribe button there. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. But beveling's my favorite thing. It just, I don't know, there's something about knocking off that edge at a 45, and it just makes it look a little bit nicer, more finished, and I don't know. I really enjoy doing it. So just using the square there to get the final, you know, dimensions or squareness or whatever, just so everything looks real pretty like for when we get that on, because we're not going to be able to do it afterwards. Obviously, we're going to start gluing them on here real soon, and I'm beveling the other one. If it's at all possible, you should probably wait until the leather's not wet to bevel, just because wet leather is... It wants to give more than it wants to cut. So it has more of a tendency to want to smush down as you're trying to bevel. And if you're not using enough force and going quick enough, you can run into some issues there. So now we're just going to use some white Elmer's school glue. I see some guys on YouTube using these like little fancy squeezer bottles with long needle tips on them and stuff. I mean, it's like, you know, you're just squeezing it out of a white school glue bottle into that anyway. But I digress. So we are just going to get both of those glued up and stuck down. You can also use contact cement for this. The last couple of videos I've done, I have used rubber cement, which, as I've stated in the past couple of videos, rubber cement is not the best option. It has a high likelihood of squeezing out the outside and kind of creating these little gummy, boogery things that, you know, don't like to grind off and don't like to pull off or cut off, and they're ugly. So for this one, I'm using school glue. Now we're just putting in a groove, or stitching groove. And for this, I don't know what the heck happened on there. It didn't end up going square. I'm not sure if I had one of my pieces slightly offline. It drove me a little bit nuts, but I was able to adjust it with how I use my stitching chisel to actually lay the stitch lines in there. The bevel is probably a 1/16 of an inch wide, and so I just kind of tapered the stitching chisel from the top of the groove line to the bottom of the groove line on the other side, and was able to get it straightened out enough where it wasn't an issue. I should have punched these holes out on these little tabs, or the top pieces, before I glued them down. You know, I try to show you guys exactly what's happening on these videos, the good part and the dirty part, you know, the mistakes that I make, just so you can kind of see the process that I'm going through while I'm making them. And so I should have done that before I glued everything down, but it's not that big of a deal. I was able to get my piece of leather in there to cut the hole out, and then, you know, obviously you can see that we were able to get it set with the hammer as well. So we're just dropping in our chisel marks here, and yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot that you got to say about that. You could kind of see, if you went back right there, the slightly off center or out of square stitching line there is better than it would have been. Not as good as I would like. I like to use an awl, as you can see here, to stretch out the holes beforehand. Just makes stitching a little bit easier. And I am not using a stitching pony like some guys do. It's a hassle for trying to film it from this angle, which is the angle I like to film at. So what I do is I just go down through with my thread, and I stitch one way, you know, weaving in and out of each hole. And then when I get to the end, I just do the exact opposite in the other direction. And for this, I start out by running my thread through. I don't know if I put it in yet. If I didn't put it in, I will. Well, you know what? On my last video that I posted where I'm making wallets, I show exactly how you start a stitch where you can hide the end seam so you don't have to burn it off. And it just makes for a nicer, more finished look. So I will link that down in the comments down below to the video for where I make my wallets. So if you want to see how I start my stitch on those, that's how I started on this also. So I don't know if I finished my sentence because sometimes I go off on tangents. So I go through all the way, stitching, weaving all the way through, and then I turn around, come back, and go in the opposite direction through all the holes so that every single stitch seam has a stitch in between. And off camera, I am spraying a little bit of water down inside there. The tight was, or the fit, yeah, oh good Lord. The fit was a little bit tight. So I just sprayed a little bit of water down in there, and that helps stretch it out really nicely and form it to exactly what you want it to be. Once that's done, I folded the tab over and pressed it into the button that I had already set, and I will use that as my guidance for punching out and setting the hole for the top snap. So I'm going to do the exact same. Oh yeah, look at me again. Must be I was really thinking I need to push that. Going to do the exact same thing on the other one after I get that stitched up, but I'm not going to make you guys sit through watching me stitch the entire thing. Actually, before we do that, we have to dye this next piece. So we're getting our buttons set. I went to go edit out the stitching of the next one, but I forgot that before I do any stitching. I'm cutting in the chisel line right now, but before we do that, we have to dye the piece. So I wanted to get the button set there, and I wanted to dye it before I do the stitching because I'm using a lighter colored dye or lighter colored stitching in a darker colored dye. And even though the string is waxed, I don't know. I think I get a better result. It looks a lot nicer when I don't when I don't dye it first. So we're gonna go ahead and get out our Feebings. I think it's dark brown, and I'm remembering my gloves this time. As you can see, I have a really bad habit of dyeing and doing things like that, painting things without wearing gloves, and then I have dye on my hands for days afterwards, and it looks like some nastiness. So going to do my best to remember that going forward. And so we're just getting a good fair bit on that. And once that is done, we're going to let that dry for a little bit. The what do you call it? The finish that we're doing on the other one is going to be, well, you guys saw the intro. It's going to be an oil rubbed or an oil finished leather with a tan coat. Oh, I did slow it down so you guys can see it here. Look at that. You don't have to go to the other video, but you should go to the other video if you haven't seen it yet, because show you how I make my wallets. But I slowed it down here. I do a double knot or a butcher's knot on my strings. Maybe I'll do a short of that where I show what a butcher's knot is. It's super simple, and it's way better than just a regular overhand knot if you guys don't ever use them for things, especially for like tying up roasts that you put in the oven. That's why it's called a butcher's knot. But I don't want to get too far off on a tangent here. So back to what I was saying before I got distracted with the butcher's knot. You pull the layers apart a little bit, and you put your needle in between the two layers of leather, and you put it through the top hole. You go down to the next hole down, and instead of continuing down the line, you go back up through the top hole again, and then you start going down. And that it gives you a nice way of terminating the end where it's not visible. And like you can see here, I guess I am going to make you sit through the stitching. We're almost all the way done with it anyways, so I got it fast forwarded. So once we are done with that, we are going to have to get the top button in that set. We're going to do it the same way, just by putting the stone in, presumably, I think is what I do. And once the stone is in there, we will push the top piece over. And you can see I did burn the end there on the one end, but that's fine. It's not, the less burnt ends you can have, the less noticeable it is. So I put the stone inside of the sheath here, or whatever you want to call it, and then push the top piece down on top of it so I can get it lined up perfectly, and then just use that as a marker for cutting out the hole. Once the hole's cut, you just set the button on your little button set, and good to go on that. And I'm going to let those dry overnight. And here we are. Now that we have let those dry, we're going to burnish the edges. I should not have, on this one, on the dark one, it's fine to burnish the edges on that because it's already been stained. On the other one, I should not have burnished the edges prior to putting on the neat's foot oil. Neat's foot, not mink oil. I kept making that mistake in the last video also. So that is just burnishing gum. I use a dauber to apply it to the outside. Daubers or little pieces of scrap leather, whatever, they're fine for putting it on. And you just want to make sure to not let it get on the face of the leather. And specifically for the untreated or unoiled tan one that I'm doing here. And did it off camera. I burnished the edges on it. You can kind of see around the edges where the burnishing gum was at, that the leather, the oil doesn't sink in quite so well. I'm going around and trying to retouch it up. I end up putting on a little bit more, and there's a little mark there on the back of it where a little daub of the burnishing gum got on it. It's fine. The oil will sink in especially if you like try to apply it from the back side. It'll just seep through the leather and hit it from that side. And by the end of it, it's fine. It's not visible like that anymore. But ideally, I should have oiled the leather and then done the burnishing on the outside. But again, like I said, I don't like to cut out the dirty details of doing this stuff. Once you've done it once, you know the order of operations that you want to do it in. You don't make the same mistakes again. But a lot of these things I only make once for projects to show you guys. So I'm not going to do them twice just to make it look perfect. I'd rather show you guys my thought process as I go and the mistakes that I make so that you can learn from them a little bit if you want to, or laugh at me and call me an idiot. Either way is fine with me. I don't mind. So we're just applying a tan coat here. It gives it a really nice waterproof finish that a little bit shiny and smooth. It's just a really nice, professional, pretty looking finish to put on the leather. So it gets a little bit tacky, so we'll just let those again dry overnight. And now we have footage of them after they've dried. You can see they're a little bit shiny. They're looking nice. That you can see that backside of the other one ended up accepting that oil where the burnishing gum had got on it. And here we are. We can roll some of that beautiful bean footage. So was out working out by the Catskills, and saw a nice beautiful spot next to a little creek, and I said, I'm going to stop and get some B-roll footage here of the stuff at the end. Yeah, you can see there the stitching line is not noticeably unsquare there, and that was the one that had the noticeably unsquare one. So I was able to correct it with the stitching line. And this is a fun little project. I really enjoyed making it. I was glad that I had a viewer suggest it for me. And, I really do appreciate any kind of comments, likes, subscriptions from you guys. All of it does make a huge difference. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that bell so that when I put out another video, you can check it out. Until next time, thank you guys. Have a great day.